in partnership with Miami's commuter newspapers and the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, or CITT. I am the host of this podcast, Javier Betancourt, Executive Director of the CITT. And with me today is a very special guest and probably one of the most important transportation professionals in the state of Florida, Stacy Miller. Stacy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Javier. I appreciate you having me.
No, thanks for making the time. And so Stacy is the District Secretary for District 6 for the Florida Department of Transportation, or FDOT. And that district covers both Miami-Dade County and Monroe County, correct? Yes. And you have a long and storied history with FDOT. You're one of these folks that's found a great place and stuck with it all these years. How long have you been with the agency?
Well, that's an embarrassing question, but I'll answer it, only because it sort of shows my age. So I've been with the Department of Transportation over 32 years now. I came here right out of school. I went to the University of Florida in Gainesville and started in the department's professional engineering training program. Okay. And I've stayed ever since.
So it's amazing how they hire people like at 10 years old. Because
I would have loved to have graduated from UF at 10.
Now, you're not from Florida, though, right? You were born and raised in, or at least born in New Jersey, I understand?
I was born in New Jersey, but raised in South Carolina.
In South Carolina? Oh, cool. What city?
I was raised in Charleston.
Charleston, oh, beautiful. Beautiful town. And what brought you to Florida?
The University of Florida, to be honest with you. I had a lot of choices, thankfully, when graduating, and I didn't want to go to the schools that were in South Carolina. Half of my graduating class was going to Clemson, and the other half was going to the University of South Carolina, and I said, I'm going to go somewhere different. And I knew I wanted to be a civil engineer, and the University of Florida has an amazing civil engineering program, especially back in the 80s, and took the opportunity to come to Florida and stayed.
Right, and like a good engineer, you found your way to FDOT.
I did.
Most of the engineers I know, regardless of where they work, started at FDOT or at some point had a touch point with FDOT. So a great place to work, from what I understand.
It is. We're a wonderful. How do I want to describe this? We're a wonderful place to learn and grow. And really, we have amazing training opportunities, not just the professional engineering training program, but we have a right-of-way training program. And we have an enormous group of people who provide excellent training in technical and non-technical skills. So we don't mind that somebody joins us, learns all that they need to, and ultimately ends up working for a consultant or a local partner, because we're all one big community. So it becomes a benefit to the department regardless. Of course, we'd love people to stay with us.
Of course.
I'm not advocating for people to leave, but it is a great place to work.
And there are lots of transportation agencies, right? Kind of at the state, regional, and local level. So what does FDOT focus on in particular? For those who may not know.
Sure. And that is actually a great question, because it is confusing to people. So the Florida Department of Transportation focuses on the interstate system and every arterial roadway that has one of those signs that shows like a little logo of the state of Florida with a number on it. So those are all the state highways. But in addition to those highways and bridges and interstates, the Florida Department of Transportation actually provides funding to our local partners, which is amazing. We provide funding to our transit partners, our rail partners, airports, seaports, and the spaceports in Florida. We actually fund Space Florida and help all of our partners end up in the stars. So it's really amazing.
And we're talking about billions of dollars.
Billions.
And both state funds and even the federal funds flow through the department. Correct?
Federal funds flow, most federal funds flow through the Florida Department of Transportation. There are some that go directly to our partners, but we have the largest budget in the department's history, $14.5 billion for this current fiscal year, which started July 1st.
This is statewide,
right? Statewide. And the legislature also gave us an additional $4 billion to focus on some very core projects throughout the state. District 6, which you've mentioned, Miami-Dade and Monroe counties, actually also has its largest work program that we've ever had. So we're very excited about all of the transportation opportunities that we're providing to our residents and visitors.
And some of that, I imagine, is the result of the infrastructure bill that was passed at the federal level that's making its way through to the local level. Right?
The new Federal Transportation Act, which we have a Federal Transportation Act regularly. Sometimes they don't do it as frequently as we'd like them to. But this Transportation Act did provide us with additional base resources. So
Mhm.
we always receive some federal resources. So that was a bit stepped up during this bill. And there are an enormous number of what are called discretionary grant programs as well that I know the department and our local partners are all vying for on a national level, hoping to bring in extra resources to the state.
Right. And you mentioned some of the roadways that the department is charged with overseeing, operating, managing, maintaining,
Yes.
expanding, et cetera. And I don't know if people really understand, but most of the roadways you travel on a daily basis, many of them are FDOT roads. So Bird Road, right, Tamiami Trail, US 1, right? These are, obviously the county has involvement in a lot of this, but those are state roads by
Those
and
are
large.
all state roads.
The major arterials.
Yes.
So you have a lot on your plate.
We do, and we move millions of people every day, and it's a dance. It's a coordinated effort, moving all of those people, good vehicles throughout the county and across counties. Obviously, we have a lot of interaction with Broward County, with Monroe County, and even interaction with Palm Beach as people are traveling to and from jobs and opportunities in the regional area.
Right. Yeah, transportation doesn't know boundaries at the end of the day.
It doesn't know the county line.
Yeah. And of course, increasingly, and especially in Miami-Dade, the department is involved more and more in what we call alternative mobility, right? Transit, bicycle, pedestrian mobility, micro-mobility. Urban air transport is kind of,
We're very excited about
this
that.
is coming around the corner. So it's really multimodal.
It is.
Right?
It is. We have for years provided express bus service on our interstates. Unfortunately, that service stopped during COVID, and it's just now re-energizing and restarting. But that express bus service is paid exclusively by the Florida Department of Transportation.
So that's I-95 Express.
I-95 Express, and there's also other express services in other counties for 595 in Broward. And I-75 started, but we haven't restarted that, and that went from Broward to Miami-Dade as well. But we also help pay for local bus service, so that's exciting. We not only participate in transit service, but as I mentioned, rail. I happen to be a member of the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority, which supports the Tri-Rail, which the Florida Department of Transportation owns. Most people don't understand that. The South Florida Rail Corridor has been owned by FDOT for many years, and we provide funding along with our local partners to help run the Tri-Rail service. And then, of course, we have the SMART program that we're working on with Miami-Dade County and the Transportation Planning Organization. So not just that, but we're assisting Miami-Dade Parks and Rec on the Ludlam Trail. We're very excited about building some pedestrian overpasses for that project.
And I live right on the Ludlam Trail, so thank you.
Excellent.
Appreciate
You're welcome.
that.
We're really excited about working with the county on that. And we're always expanding sidewalk and pedestrian mobility. We're trying to fill in those spaces where sidewalks don't exist today. Bicycle lanes and bike mobility is a little more difficult here in Miami-Dade County. I'll be honest with you, very constrained. And so what we're trying to do is work with our local partners at the county and the cities to provide those resources. They might just not be on the state highway system. They might be a block off on a local connector, but we're still wanting to provide that mobility.
Look, and as someone who used to bike to work 10 miles in each direction prior to the pandemic, I will tell you, I don't want to ride my bike on some of your highways. I
know.
Certainly not I-95 or the MacArthur.
And we don't want you on our limited access
Now, in some places like US 1, we do have the underline, which is being built, which I believe you're helping to fund. And so you can run alongside some of these facilities where it makes sense, right?
Yes. And we're trying to provide the right sort of connected resources, whether it's signage, whether it's adjusted signalization, working with the county so that people who are biking or walking have that connection and they're not waiting on a vehicle.
Right. Now, you had a great staff member, I believe she was your bicycle pedestrian coordinator, Tiffany Gorky, I believe now is in Central.
She is. And she's in our Tallahassee office.
So she was starting to put together a comprehensive bicycle plan of some sort. Is that continuing?
Yes, we have a new bicycle pedestrian coordinator, and she's continuing with that master plan, and we are working to fill in those gaps with time, working with our partners to find those connections and really build out the network. We're a little behind the times, I think, on finding bike lanes or creating bike lanes and safe bike
Right. And it's,
access.
as you said, it's much more difficult to shoehorn in after the
Yes,
fact, right?
it
Instead of
is.
doing it from scratch.
Exactly.
But desperately needed.
Very
right?
much so.
And I love the word network because, I love the Underline and the Ludlam Trail and the Commodore Trail. These are independent trails. What we really need is something much more comprehensive and interconnected.
And we're working with the Miami-Dade Department of Transportation and Public Works, Parks and Rec, the Transportation Planning Organization. All of these have acronyms, and I'm trying not to use them.
Most of the folks watching this probably know them.
Okay.
That's okay.
But we're trying to find that nexus so that there is a coordinated network. And it's not just a road network, but it's a trails network, it's a bike network, it's a pedestrian network, it's a transit network, it's a rail network. And all of these elements layer together
Right.
to create the overall overarching transportation network.
It's about connectivity and options, having the different options. We were talking before the show about how we're never going to get rid of traffic, right? Congestion is here to
not.
stay. We manage it as best we can,
Yes.
but we need to provide people alternatives so that they don't have to sit in traffic if they choose not to. Right?
Yes. I think getting rid of traffic is probably a bad sign of what's happening economically. So we want to manage traffic and, as you said, provide options. And those options range from, on the interstate, having express lanes as an option to a general purpose lane, having transit as an option, rail as an option, bicycle, pedestrian, micromobility. While we're not in the micromobility arena, it's just providing the infrastructure
Right.
that provides that basis for it. So,
And grants from time to time
and
as well. Yeah.
lots of grants. Yeah. We are very cognizant of the fact that money is a driving factor on infrastructure. So we provide mostly capital, which is to actually build that infrastructure, buy buses, buy train cars, et cetera. But there are some grants for operation, and we provide those on an annual basis. There's quite a number of millions of dollars associated with our
Right.
grant programs.
All right, let's go from millions to billions and
Okay.
talk about the SMART program.
Oh, we did directly to billions.
So SMART, of course, stands for the Strategic Miami Area Rapid Transit Program, SMART. And really is just honoring the original promises made to voters when they passed the half-penny sales tax for transportation, what we called at the time the People's Transportation Plan. So tell us about the SMART program, and more importantly, what is the department's role in it, and what are some of the corridors you're specifically charged with developing?
So all of the primary corridors happen to be state highways, or there's one corridor that's not a state highway, but all
Which
of
one is
them. Well, there's actually two. There is
Okay.
the commuter rail service that we're working on, the Northeast
Okay.
Corridor, which is
That's true.
FEC/Brightline, and then there's the East-West Corridor as
Right.
well. But
Because that's MDX,
correct.
potentially.
So, but all of the other corridors are actually on the state highway system. And whether we're the lead or we're just the operator of the facility, we're working with Miami-Dade County or actively pursuing the projects ourselves. So it's really exciting. We've committed $100 million to the South Corridor,
Yes,
which
thank
is
you.
under construction right now. It's very exciting. I love watching that come out of the ground, partly of why I'm a civil engineer, is we get to see those plans become actual concrete and asphalt and get used. But the Department of Transportation is working on the North Corridor directly. We're very excited. We stopped for a little while. We had a little pause while the county was working a different angle, but we've re-energized and re-engaged and are now working to reestablish the North Corridor study and moving on, hopefully to get to construction in the near term, not the far term.
And the North Corridor, again, is 27th Avenue.
27th
From
Avenue.
the existing Metro Rail to the
all
county
the
line.
way to essentially the county line
Right.
stadium
And
area.
potentially, if Broward wishes, to extend it beyond.
And
Right.
we've had some conversations with Broward. It's not in what they call their primo plan
Okay.
right now, but we want to make sure we have
They'll catch up
opportunity. And of course, we're working on the Flagler corridor. So we have a demonstration project coming out this fiscal year that will take the outside lanes on Flagler on the eastern part in the one-way pairs section, and we'll have better bus rapid transit service there with the expectation that we'll extend that service all the way to the west. Very excited about providing that opportunity.
Yeah.
And we're working with the county on the beach corridor and lots of other locations.
The one that seems to be slipping behind a little bit for understandable reasons is the Kendall Corridor. And I understand that that's on pause while we wait for the results
Yes.
of the Flagler demonstration project.
Exactly, exactly. We realized we probably needed a bit more information to support the recommendations for the Kendall Corridor.
Right.
So we think the Flagler Corridor is a great opportunity to generate some information, get people excited about bus rapid transit. We know it's an interesting concept to take a traffic lane and make it a bus lane. So
Right.
we want people to feel comfortable about it. So we're going to wait for the Flagler Corridor, generate some information, and then ultimately restart.
Okay. So outside of the SMART program, what other types of transit initiatives is the department involved in? Park and rides, we want to talk about.
So we have all the park and rides I think that we're going
Yeah.
to build right now. Unfortunately, again, we're very constrained. We do have some upcoming projects that will deal with truck parking.
Oh,
We do
okay.
have a truck parking problem here in
Yes,
Miami-Dade
yes, we do.
County. So we're contemplating two particular locations. One would be the Golden Glades interchange after we do our current project, rebuilding the Golden Glades interchange, but we're contemplating adding truck parking at that location, which would complement our multimodal center that's just been built, as well as the improvements that we're about to get underway with at the interchange.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that transportation mobility isn't just about moving people, it's about moving goods.
Goods.
And, with the advent of Amazon and all these delivery
Yes.
services, that's gotten even more complex. I
Yes,
believe.
it's one of our focus areas is a robust supply chain, and we help support that not only in the road network, but by providing funding to support the airport here at Miami International. We supply funding to Port Miami, as well as other ports throughout the
Our two
state.
economic engines.
Major economic engines, and then we do provide capital to improve our rail corridors to move those goods by rail, by plane, by truck. So it's a coordinated effort of making sure that we're funding at every layer.
Now, we've already mentioned Tri-Rail, so we won't rehash that, but one of the things I'm personally excited about is Amtrak.
Yes.
There were longstanding plans for Amtrak to connect to the airport, essentially, at the
At the Miami
airport
Intermodal
station,
Center.
Miami Intermodal Center. It's
Yeah.
had many names. And there were some issues with that in the past
There were.
that have since been resolved. Can you give us an update on what's happening with
I'm
Amtrak?
very excited. We've had some really robust conversations. They've been down to the MIC twice now, and have checked out what's called the head house, which is where passengers would actually purchase tickets and pick up luggage. They've also checked the tracks. They've brought in a train.
Oh, great.
It's very exciting. They brought a train in, made sure
It fit.
everything fit. It did. So we're now really just negotiating the lease terms for them to come down into the MIC and to be able to use that. So we're hoping in a few months, fall, maybe winter, we'll have Amtrak all the way down to the Miami Intermodal Center.
Ooh, I want to blow the whistle. So you tell me when to get started. I'll be there.
Get you there.
Okay, so let's talk about, I don't know what we want to call it, traditional vehicular transportation.
Sure.
Because you have a lot of things going on in that space, obviously. So let's start with I-395. Anyone who's been through downtown or trying to get to the beach, obviously
Drives
knows that
through
there's a
that.
huge project
Yes. Yes.
going on. Tell us more about that project and what's the status?
So the project is, as everybody knows, is a little behind our expected completion date, but we are moving along. As everyone can see, if you're driving in the area, you start to see the arches. They're coming out of the ground.
It's pretty impressive. Yeah.
It's exceedingly impressive. You see what's called the knuckle, which is that main pier rising. They're going to start to do some additional heavy or mass concrete pours to the knuckle, and then you'll start to see those arches connecting. So it's
supposed to be a fountain, I guess.
exciting. It is a fountain.
It is,
A lot of
okay.
people call it a spider web.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a fountain. But that is the signature structure, which
Right.
we know will become sort of that postcard background for Miami.
Right.
It's going to be beautiful. So it's taking a little longer than we expected, but in addition to the signature structure, we did some improvements along I-95. We did some concrete pavement modifications, and then of course we're double decking
Right.
836 as you come into that interchange. So it's a lot of new movements, a lot of change, but all for the good. I think
Right.
we're going to really see some huge improvement and some bottlenecks that get released once we've made all of these improvements.
Yeah, so for those who may not be aware, so it was largely a safety project, right? It's a very unsafe kind of stretch of roadway because a lot of the movements coming to and from the beach, a lot of weaving.
Yeah.
You know, the infrastructure was antiquated, it needed to be updated. But it was also about reconnecting a community that had been divided.
And we're really excited about the fact that the signature structure is actually much higher. It has a much higher vertical clearance, and it allows us to have a 33-acre site underneath for community activity. We're working with the city of Miami. We've engaged our designer to create a master plan. We might not be able to ultimately build that master plan with this project, but we'll be providing the city with all of the elements that we're not able to construct, so that when they receive additional resources, they'll be able to augment what we're constructing. But it's going to be a fabulous space.
Yeah.
I know they're in the process of renaming that space. It has a name, but we're not using it. It's not,
I'll say it since you can't, but
no one's a fan.
For those who are aware, I think the working name was the Underdeck.
Underdeck. And
now I believe it's the Overtown Miami Greenway.
yes.
And then it had a kind of another name associated with
It
it.
did, but we're very excited that the community has really embraced
Yeah.
the opportunity to be in that space, and it's going to be fabulous.
Yeah.
33 acres of green area
In downtown.
in downtown
Yeah.
almost an impossibility.
Absolutely, and desperately needed, right? As
Very
people continue to move to downtown, the population grows, they need space in which to recreate whatever we're going to do there, right?
Exactly, and for the Department of Transportation, one of our focus areas really is community,
Mhm.
and whether it's a 395, which is reconnecting communities, or making sure that our projects that we're actively working on are meeting the needs of the transportation network and the community.
Right.
Because if we're not building something that's needed or wanted, it
It's the whole
doesn't
point
add
of our
value.
existence as
Exactly.
public servants.
It doesn't
Yeah.
add any value.
Yeah.
So we want to add value and make sure that the amenities that people need as part of the transportation network.
So another place you're adding value is in Golden Glades. Tell us about that project. And it's really multiple projects kind of at once.
It's actually,
Right.
I think it's 8 projects that
Yeah.
we combined back together. It's in partnership with the Florida's Turnpike, which is a function of the Florida Department of Transportation, but it's a massive endeavor. We're actually in the process of accepting bids next month, so can't talk a lot about it. But it's going to create some of those connections that are missing today that force everyone
Right.
onto the road network and off of the limited
Trying to
access
get onto I-95 north from the
facilities,
Palmetto
right?
has
So
always
the
been,
Palmetto to 95 is
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
get solved. So we're really excited about
Finally.
that. But there are other improvements to I-95, the Palmetto, the Turnpike, State Road 9, and State Road 7 as well. So there's a lot going on in that area.
Yeah, not to mention the transit component, right? So the multimodal facility, which is state of the art,
It is.
right? You have the tri-rail there, trying to
Mhm.
build a pedestrian bridge to connect to that. I believe, well, you mentioned the truck parking, right? So
We'll eventually have truck parking. We're obviously not going to be able to do that while we're in
Sure.
the midst of rebuilding the Golden Glades interchange. That'll come after. And then I believe the Transportation Planning Organization is going to be working with us for another pedestrian access
Okay.
within the area.
great.
But again, that'll have to wait until after our contractor is done. And it's going to take a long time. Bear with us. This is a 7 to 8 year project,
Yes.
rebuilding. Think about it this way. You have 450,000 people that are in your office every day. So you're trying to work around that.
Sure.
So it's going to take us a little time.
Remember one of your predecessors, Jose Abreu,
Mhm.
used to say, it's like changing a towel in your bathroom while you're taking a shower. It's how do you do those two things at the same time?
It's complicated. We have amazing contractors and consultants that work with us, but it takes longer than people wish it would take. And we understand there's inconvenience, but bear with us. It'll be fabulous in the end.
Well, Madam Secretary, unfortunately, we're out of time. I mean, we could keep talking for hours. But I appreciate you joining us here in the
pleasure.
show. I appreciate everything you do on behalf of the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, folks, that's all the time we have here for this segment of Mobility Matters. You can join us here every 2 weeks on Thursdays from 9 to 10 a.m. And you can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, who am I missing? LinkedIn. We'll see about Threads in the coming future. And as always, we want to thank our partners in this endeavor, Community Newspapers, for hosting and producing the show. Thank you, and see you next time.